Why does the planet Gagarin in the hit 2023 video game Starfield have so many pipes? This one building has 37 pipes going into or around it. This tank has like 10 giant pipes coming out of it. What are all these pipes for? Where do they go? And maybe most importantly, what's in them? Let's start just by talking about what might be in these pipes. Now, initially, it looked like this was going to be really tough to figure out. The large tanks that some of these pipes come out of aren't labeled, and none of the pipes themselves are labeled either. All of them are also the exact same color, and most of them just disappear underground where we can't follow them. So how can we possibly start to piece this together? It all starts with one single thing that I randomly stumbled upon while playing the game. This tank. This giant tank says the word methane on it, which means some of these pipes probably contain liquid methane. And believe it or not, this one little clue is going to be enough for us to piece together how this entire system of pipes fits together. So over by the landing pads, we find these tanks, two big old tanks divided into two sections with large pipes coming off of each one. The obvious assumption here is that these tanks contain fuel for refueling spacecraft that land here, like a gas station. So the question becomes, what chemical might be used as fuel for spaceships hundreds of years in the future? You see where this is going. And it turns out we have an answer for this. Liquid methane. We'll talk about why that is later, but let me just connect some dots for you, literally. If it's fair to assume that these tanks contain liquid methane, and we know that these tanks up here definitely contain liquid methane, then we can deduce that these tanks are somehow connected to these tanks. We can't be sure that there aren't other pieces of equipment in between the two, and we don't know exactly how the pipes run underground, but this is good. This is a start. It's like finding the corner pieces when you're doing a puzzle. What we need to do next is look closely at these tanks and look for any clues about what they might be used for and why they are where they are, which, just as a spoiler alert, is going to involve me teaching you how to read those little colored diamonds with the numbers in them. So I hope you're excited for that. Also, if you were wondering what just showed up in my hand out of nowhere, well, you're going to be thrilled. It's a collection of today's sponsor, MeUndies, which also means it's literally my underpants. Okay, here's the thing. These underpants are incredible. They're ridiculously comfy, they're durable, they stay dry and breathable no matter what. They're great. That's why I bought so many. These were not sent to me for free. I paid for these. I've had these for maybe like 5 months, 6 months, and they still feel exactly like they did the first day I got them. Speaking of pipes, they also really want me to tell you about their new boxers with a contoured pouch and ball caddy, which is a product for people with a dick and balls. It looks very comfortable. I haven't personally tried it. Maybe I'll get one so I can tell you about it next time. Also, just FYI, if you buy a pair of MeUndies and you don't love it, you can return it for a full refund, no questions asked. It's totally risk-free. Their fabric is also sustainably made, and something else. I can never remember all of the talking points. You would think I would put them in my teleprompter. Whatever, they're great underpants. I don't know, what do you want me to say? Good things come in big packages at MeUndies. Get 20% off your first order plus free shipping on orders of $75 or more at MeUndies.com/AnyAustin. That's me. Enter promo code AnyAustin. Please enter the promo code. So what we need to do first here is look more closely at both sets of tanks, which we've determined at this point are probably connected. We're going to start with these larger ones by the landing pad, like we said. We've got a spherical tank on the bottom and then a larger cylindrical tank on top. Now, one thing I know is that liquid methane needs to be at a pretty high pressure in order to be stored. And if you're going to store anything at high pressure, you want to do it in a tank with rounded edges so the pressure is distributed evenly along the inner wall. This can help prevent an extremely violent few minutes. Because of that, my assumption is that these spherical tanks on the bottom are the ones that contain liquid methane. But then what do the tanks on the top contain? Well, these top tanks aren't spheres, they're cylinders. And cylinders have weak points along the seams, making them a lot less safe for storing high pressure chemicals. My initial thought was that maybe these top tanks contained liquid oxygen, which is an oxidizer that's necessary for rocket fuel to burn efficiently. But liquid oxygen also needs to be stored at pretty high pressure. So putting it in a less sturdy tank would make it susceptible to cracks and leaks and explosions. That said, maybe this tank could be holding not liquid methane, but gaseous methane. You see, liquid methane, when it's contained, it evaporates over time, and that evaporated methane needs to go somewhere. So a lot of tank systems will hold on to that gas and use it to self-pressurize or maybe recirculate it back into liquid or, vent it off into the lovely Gagarin atmosphere. I think in real life, this kind of system is usually two separate tanks connected by a pipe, but, I don't know. I'm sure you could stack them on top and it would be fine, right? Now, all of this is mostly circumstantial evidence, but I do actually have one small piece piece of concrete evidence as well. Do you see these yellow markings? I was curious why a tank might be labeled with yellow markings like this, and so I started Googling around to figure out what sorts of colors and labels that we use for various chemicals in real life, and what I found was very interesting. The American Society of Mechanical Engineers has guidelines for labeling dangerous chemicals, and it turns out that yellow is the color that we use for flammables and oxidizers, like rocket fuel. Now, I know it sounds weird that a spacefaring society hundreds of years in the future would use the same standardization practices of 2025 United States of America, but this same spacefaring society hundreds of years in the future seems to be using the 2025 USA standards for the placement of lighted exit signs over doors, so, stranger things could be true. So, okay, we accept that these tanks are for liquid methane, with a vapor recovery unit stacked on top. Let's talk about the other tanks now and what those might be. These tanks, as you can see, have a lot of pipes running out and around them, and usually when you see that, it means that whatever is in the tanks is being recirculated or monitored or adjusted in some way. These tanks almost certainly aren't storage tanks. They're probably just one stop on the journey that our methane might be taking, which makes sense since we're pretty sure that the methane is ultimately getting put into the other tanks that we talked about. Personally, I think these are probably something called flow conditioning tanks, which is a piece of equipment that can take a slightly imperfect chemical and make it perfect. It can remove air bubbles, it can regulate temperature, it can smooth out the flow. Basically, it ensures that whatever is coming out the other end is stable and consistent, which is what you want if you're putting it into a gas tank for a flying machine. There's also a fun little detail on this tank. Take a look at this. This is a National Fire Protection Agency hazardous materials diamond. We've all seen them and probably just assumed it was some sort of alien language, but this diamond is something we use on modern day Earth to help identify what types of chemicals are contained in the tanks. The way this diamond works is that there is a score of 0 to 4 in each space, 0 being fine and 4 being really bad, and each color represents a different type of hazard. Blue represents how hazardous the material is to interact with in terms of health effects on the body. Red represents how flammable the material is. Yellow represents how stable the material is and whether it will explode easily. And the white spot is a place for other informational symbols, like if it's radioactive or corrosive or whatever. So for this diamond in Starfield, this is on the liquid methane tank. They've given it a 130 rating. That means it's a little bit dangerous for your health, it's very flammable, and it's not very unstable. The actual real-life rating for liquid methane is 340. Can you tell me what a 340 rating means, kids? That's right, it means it. Now, the funny thing is, I'm pretty sure that the 130 rating, the one that's actually in the game, is the only one that they had a model for, because if you look around, all of the other NFPA stickers in the game, they all use that exact same one. So there's this one inside this doctor's office here. So it's probably just a coincidence that it was even remotely close to the real-life one for liquid methane. But, I still really like that it exists at all. I think that's funny. So far, this idea broadly makes a lot of sense. Methane goes into the flow conditioning tank, it gets purified or whatever, and then it flows out to the tanks and into the spaceships. The two questions we have remaining are, 1, where does the methane flow from before it goes into the conditioning tanks? And 2, is there any other equipment we would expect to see as part of this whole system? For the first question, the answer is pretty obvious. We'd be looking for some sort of very large storage tank to hold all of that unprocessed methane while it awaits distribution. Again, probably a spherical tank or at least something with rounded edges and something large that could hold vast quantities of methane so that they won't ever run out of it for the ships. And you're not going to believe this, but I actually found one. And it's not even very far away from the flow conditioning tanks. The only thing that's a little bit weird about this is that it's mostly buried underground, but then it hit me. Gagarin is really, really hot.
You think you're hot? Try wearing security armor.
It's like over 100 degrees Fahrenheit during the day, according to the lore. And you need to insulate the liquid methane from the heat. And what cheaper way to do that than just to bury the whole thing underground? That's a pretty cool little detail. If it was intentional, it might be a coincidence. Or was it? Nobody knows. We're gonna find out later, actually. Hold tight. So that just really leaves the second question. Is there any other equipment that we would expect to see in a system like this if it was real life? And the answer is yes, obviously, right? Depending on how granular you really want to get. So right now we have raw methane storage tanks, going into conditioning tanks, and then going into the final fuel storage tank. This on its own makes more sense than you probably would expect from your average video game. Even if this is all just random coincidence, like sort of an industrial Rorschach test, it's pretty neat to see it all here and to be able to draw these kinds of conclusions. But technically, there's some other equipment you might expect in a sequence like this. Firstly, you need some kind of pump to move the methane from the raw storage into the conditioning tanks, and I don't see anything like that in the game, so I'm not sure how the methane is moving through the system. Especially not up to those conditioning tanks, which for some reason are like 30 feet in the air. I don't know. So that's at least one thing that we're missing. Next, you might expect to see some kind of vapor collection thing at the conditioning station as well. Remember the thing we talked about with the upper tank in the over by the fuel pads? Now this actually might be here because it's totally possible that only one of these two tanks is actually a conditioning tank and that the other one is for vapor recovery. That's actually more in line with how this works in real life anyway, so we're going to check that one off. Very nice. Next, given that all the pipes from the conditioning tank to the final fuel storage tank go underground, we'd expect to see at least some section of pipe above ground to use as maintenance and monitoring access. And guess what? Just a short distance away, we find this pipe, a really big pipe. And not only does this pipe have various valves and things on it, but it's actually wrapped in insulation, which is a great little detail. You know, if we said earlier that that big sphere was buried for temperature control, it makes sense that you would also need to protect a pipe of this size from the elements in the same way. And then lastly, the only other thing we would expect to be looking for is some kind of computerized monitoring station. And that's an easy one. Starfield has computers all over the fucking place. Any one of these computers could be part of a monitoring system, so we basically get a free pass on that. Excellent. Let's take a look at the whole system as we've determined it to be set up, okay? So we've got the raw storage tank up here, which flows without a pump to the conditioning station, and then into the vapor recovery tank, which then comes around to this safety access pipe, which gives us maintenance access, right? And then it comes down here, it goes back underground, and eventually it makes its way to our final fuel storage tank while being monitored all the way by various computer systems. Now, given all the pipes down here, there are two paths it could really take. It could be coming in from the middle here, or it could be coming in from the right and around. Since we can't see underground, there's no real way for us to know. Maybe it's both. This is pretty wild if you think about it, right? I mean, we went from nothing is labeled and nothing makes sense to actually, I think we can trace the entire path of the liquid methane from start to finish with just a little bit of detective work. Anytime I get to this point in a video, it's really hard for me to tell whether I'm a genius or whether I'm insane, because everything I'm saying is based on real, truthful observations. Everything I've said is a fact, but it's really easy to take a bunch of facts and draw totally incorrect conclusions from them if you lack any education in the subject matter. This is like a huge reason why pseudo-archaeology or like woo-woo ideas about quantum mechanics have become really popular. Tough problem. So when I look at my big theory about how all this equipment connects together in Starfield, and I look at all of the facts that I've used to draw those conclusions, it's easy to feel like I've cracked the code and then just to pass that information along to you. I could end the video right here and most of you would walk away thinking, oh wow, Starfield, they put so much fun work into it. Wow, I didn't realize how much detail it had. But just to be clear, we have no idea if I'm right about any of this. The only way we could possibly know if I'm right is if I could talk directly to the people who placed all of the pipes here on Gagarin way back when Starfield was in development, and then get those people to do a fact check on all of my theories. Inside this envelope, I have an email that I printed out, and this email has correspondence from two people, someone named John and someone named Raphael. Now, John and Raphael both work at Bethesda Game Studios, and this isn't a joke, by the way. I feel like this is sounding like I'm doing a bit and making up names, but this is all true. John Gravato was the senior concept artist on Starfield, and Raphael Vargas was the lead city artist on Starfield. I sent John and Raphael pictures of all the equipment I was looking at on Gagarin, along with my theories about what they were for, and then I asked them to fact check me. This is either going to be very humbling or very affirming, okay? Blah, blah, blah. Austin, we love your videos so much. Okay, here we go. Number one. In the case of the giant underground storage tank that I said contained unprocessed liquid methane, I was 100% correct. This is a quote from Raphael Vargas. Quote, I designed the large gas methane containers based on tankers that transport liquefied natural gas and real-world methane refineries. We just got an email from the guy who made this tank. This is my dream come true. Check this out. This is a picture of those large natural gas tankers he was talking about. First of all, kind of terrifying. But secondly, that's exactly the type of thing that we looked at on Gagarin. Really cool. Okay, next one. In the case of the elevated tank that I said were flow conditioning tanks, I was 100% correct again. Again, this is real. The quote is right here. This is from John Gravato. I hope that's how I pronounce it. Quote, correct. I saw these as storage tanks that use complex twists, angles, and elevation pressures to remove bubbles from the liquids. 2 for 2. I mean, come on. Okay, next one. In the case of the insulated section of pipe that I said was monitoring for the liquid methane, I was incorrect. Womp womp. Quote, this is also from John Gravato, who says, I actually saw this as a thermal vent pipe, perhaps storing natural thermic energy for heating systems designed to keep the facility heated at night. Gagarin nights are as cold as the days are hot. I think this is so cool. First of all, it proves that they weren't just telling me I was right every time just to make me feel good. But secondly, I love the way he said, I actually saw this as. He didn't say this is a thermal vent pipe. He said, I saw it as a thermal vent pipe. And that's exactly the thing. Just like with song lyrics, I think there is absolutely room for individual interpretations of video game environments, and hearing that someone who works on the game has that kind of light touch approach to the environmental canon is really cool to me. Okay, last one. We have one more. In the case of the fuel storage tanks near the landing pad that I said were used to fuel the nearby ships, I was neither right nor wrong. Quote, I don't have anything for this one, but I like your interpretation. This quote really gets to the heart of something that we always talk about on this channel. It is very cool when games take the time to create extremely realistic environments where they go through the routines of every NPC and they make sure every single power line connects to a substation. But for me personally, a game that strikes a balance between super thoughtful about the logic and super artistic or even overtly blasé about the logic, that's my sweet spot. I say this still counts for my theory though, because they didn't have a theory, so I think mine is still correct. Let me read you another one of the quotes that Raphael sent me. Quote, we used the pipes to break up sight lines, add visual interest, reduce repetitiveness, draw attention, introduce color variation, guide the player, or simply make the environment feel more dynamic and cool. As level builders, we often use props to help tell stories, and the pipes were part of that visual narrative. It's also important to note that as we build the world, we create modular elements called pack-ins, which are reused across multiple levels and environments. While the original intent of a pack-in might come from one specific reference, its final use can vary depending on the level designer or artist implementing it. All of this says a lot about the way that games are put together, but that second thing in particular, the thing about the modular elements, you can see this if you travel to other planets in the game. I went to Mars, yes, like Mars, like from the solar system in real life, and on it you can find a ton of those giant storage tanks, as well as really huge pipes. Saturn's moon Titan too, which actually has lakes of liquid methane, again, like literally in real life, that's a scientific fact. Titan has a whole system of pipes for harvesting and processing that liquid methane, which is just such a cool detail. That combination of real scientific information with the messy, collaborative, and beautiful game design process is one of the things that I think makes Starfield genuinely kind of special. It's not a perfect game by any means, but it does have a certain je ne sais quoi, at least for me. Now, just like with anything that we look at, there's always going to be some level of detail we can go into that makes the whole theory fall apart. For example, even though rockets do use liquid methane as fuel, they technically also need some sort of oxidizer to burn properly, and we didn't see any infrastructure for that. There are tons of other little things you can dig into to see where the simulation starts to break from reality, and if you have time, boot up Starfield and go have a look for yourself. But for my part, the fact that we were able to deduce some pretty broad strokes truths about the world design from just a few bits of information, that's pretty awesome. There were some other quotes and tidbits from the developers that didn't fit into the scope of this video, so I'll publish a little addendum to this on my Patreon at some point in the next week or two maybe. It's $3 if you want to join, but obviously you can just bug somebody in the Discord and I'm sure they'll give you a link. But aside from that, big shout out to Jess at Bethesda Games for helping make this all come together. Big thanks to John and Raphael for their time, and big thanks to you for watching this video. Enjoy video games. I'm Annie Austin.